Well, good morning and welcome to VFW Post 1003. This is our dedication of our veterans and first responders Memorial Plaza and a celebration of the Post 100th anniversary. Uh, I'm Scott Ingham, the commander here, and it's quite an honor to be a commander with such a good group of veterans that serve here at the Post. Just a brief background on what we do is that we help out around the community, we help out vets. In fact, we just received the state award for our community service. We also received an all-state award for Post, and for the second year in a row, we were an All-American Post. So welcome to Kalaf's Corner. And I'm sure I see a lot of faces out there to know who Phil Kalaf is. And this was an idea we had for everything that Phil did around here. There's an idea he'd like to get a Veterans Memorial. And one of the things we did is we partnered up with St. Martin's. They were going to do a Veterans Memorial in town, and they helped out and contributed to this corner as well. So we thank them very much so for that, Daryl. That being said, I'd like to recognize some of our dignitaries. We have Senator Mike Burns here. We have Representative Rudy Veet here. We got our state commander, Royce Kelb. We've got our district commander, Marion Archuleta. We have an honor to have a guest with Mary Paulsite. Is that correct? Paulsell. My handwriting, sorry about that. She's with the Central Missouri Honor Flight, so thank you all for attending today. And more importantly, I'd like to recognize the Kalaf family. I see quite a few of them here. Thank you all for coming out, and it's an honor to have you here today. We would like to have Lillian Hinches come up and give us a word.
I would also like to personally welcome all our honored guests, and especially the Kalaf, Cindy Kalaf and her entire family. Our state commander is here, our pastor who's just said the prayer, Mike Burns Getter, Mayor Daryl Rifle, and a few others that I probably didn't have written down because I didn't know they were going to be here. But all of our veterans and first responders and their families, they're such an important part of our community. And with them, without them, we would not even be here. I feel privileged to be able to be asked to speak with all of you on this celebration of our Post 1003 100-year anniversary and dedication of this memorial to a man whom I personally and proudly called brother and friend, Phil Kalaf. Several years ago, Phil and I spent a year as co-leaders of Post 1003. It was my first year as auxiliary president for Post 1003. We worked well together and both had a very successful year. Don and I had been friends with Phil and his family for many years, but working together, we became closer. And Phil and Cindy dubbed us Extended Kalaf Family, which I felt very proud to be. I was honored to have a relationship that close with such a wonderful group of people, all of them, sisters and brothers of his and children. It's really amazing. We were all very sad to lose Phil a few years later. He was such a special person. always ready to do whatever he could to help anyone. He worked very hard, working with both the post and auxiliary members. He was often up here fixing food for post functions or just for members. His meals were legendary, I can tell you that. I don't even know a lot of female cooks who cooked as well as he did. We all miss him very much, and I am glad that we can honor him and his family today with this memorial. I would also like to add that if you are interested or eligible in becoming a part of our post and auxiliary, we invite you to please come and visit with us later and see if we can sign you up. Our organization is about helping veterans and their families, and we also work in our community as an organization to help those in need. We have fun as we work together. And I am very proud to be a veteran's wife and have learned so much over the years of what they have suffered for us. We can never thank them too much. And our auxiliary is meant to be a support for all they want to do and all they dream to do. A big thank you to all of those who helped prepare the food and worked on the Memorial Plaza to make it possible for this day to be. Thank you, veterans and responders, and thank all of you for coming today.
Now it's my honor to introduce Cindy Kalaf.
Hello, my name is Cindy Kalaf, and I'm here to tell you about the life of my husband, Phil Kalaf. And what a life he had. He was born the sixth of 8 children on June 24th, 1950, at St. Mary's Hospital here in Jeff City. He was the youngest boy in his family with 2 older brothers. He had 5 sisters, 3 older than him, and 2 younger sisters. He grew up in the once booming town of Meda, Missouri, and he was lucky to grow up in Meda. You see, there were 2 Owen sisters, Eva and Lily, from Kansas City, who married 2 of the Kalaf brothers, John and Joe, from Meda, Missouri. Phil's parents were the younger pair, Joe and Lily. The town of Meda had the honor of watching all 13 of the Kalaf young'uns grow into beautiful and handsome, responsible adults. But while they were still young, Phil told me stories of jumping off of a swinging bridge in St. Elizabeth and borrowing some watermelons from a rightfully disgruntled farmer one night. He was raised as a Catholic and served the church as an altar boy as well. Those examples were just a drop of water in the ocean of experiences of his growing up. He also learned to love love and responsibility in contributing to a large family. Phil's mom, Lily, said her best years were caring for her children, the first 5 being born in a 4.5-year span. She had no running water, used an outhouse for bathroom facilities, and cooked on a wood stove. As was tradition in the Kalaf family, the boys enlisted in the armed services after high school. They all chose the Navy. Anthony, the oldest, enlisted with 7 other buddies from high school. David followed suit 3 years later. Phil graduated high school in 1968 during the Vietnam War. Rather than wait to be drafted, Phil enlisted in the Navy as his older brothers did. He was advised by his brothers that he would have more choice in what he did if he enlisted. So in October of 1968, Phil and his cousin John Mike enlisted. Phil was trained to be a radio man, and he was happy with that. Except There was one major problem that was not apparent before he was deployed the first time. Phil had major motion sickness, which he passed on to our oldest daughter, by the way. Phil suffered immensely, cooped up in a hot, windowless radar radio room, especially when the seas were rough. One of his Navy buddies later told me they called him Bucket Boy because he was so sick, they tied a bucket around his neck and sat him in a corner while they covered for him. He was on 3 different ships during those 4 years of service. He would apply for a brother duty, so they would transfer him to his brother David's ship, except by the time he was assigned to that ship, David would have been transferred to another ship. David and Phil never accomplished brother duty. One of the ships he was on was hit by torpedoes and had to be towed into a safe port. But fortunately, he never had to jump off a sinking ship. The Navy never did put him on shore duty in those 4 years due to his seasickness. When he entered the Navy, he was a healthy 150 pounds. When he was discharged, he weighed a paltry 96 pounds. His discharge story was also interesting. His captain kept urging him to re-enlist, despite the fact that he had suffered so much from seasickness. Phil politely declined every time. So, early one morning, Phil was ordered to pack up his things. His captain put him on a skiff that took him to Da Nang without any discharge orders or a way to get home. It was a long story, but Phil did find a way to get back to base in California, where he received his honorable discharge. That happened in October of 1972. He got back home and got a job at Modern Business Systems as a copier technician. He had quite an extensive territory to service and maintain copy machines. That is where he met Don Hinches, who ran the parts department. Phil's cousin, John Mike, also worked at Modern. With Phil, John Mike, and Don being veterans, they ventured into the downtown Sone VFW Post 1003. Much to their chagrin and disappointment, the WW2 Post veterans did not welcome them. They had not fought in the big war. This did not just happen at this post. It was nationwide that these new veterans were held in disdain, never welcomed back from the war, and not recognized as true veterans at that time in history. Phil wanted the camaraderie of other veterans who knew what the Vietnam vets had experienced, even though it was a different war. He was very disappointed. In December of 1972, I met Phil on a blind date arranged by his sister. Where are you, Sarah? There you are. His sister, Sarah, at the old Charles E. Still. Oh, I was on New Year's Eve. So I met Phil on a blind date arranged by his sister, Sarah, on New Year's Eve. I was home on vacation from nursing school and had worked with Sarah at the old Charles E. Still Hospital. I fell in love with this man the first time I met him. But he needed some time to decide if he wanted me for a wife. He did support me through the rest of my nursing school experience. He didn't let me quit. We were promised in December of 1973. You youngins probably don't know what that means. Engaged in the summer of 1974 and married in September of 1975 after I graduated and took my boards. After we were married, I saw the magnificent skill of this wonderful man and what he had in the kitchen. Plus, he loved to cook. He said it relaxed him after work. And who was I to take away his relaxation? I did tell him later in our marriage that if he passed first, I would starve to death, since I never really learned to cook. We had no idea what the future held for us. Phil was thrilled when the Wyman Basinger VFW Post 35, which this was the original building, was built. It was here that he truly found his third home. He had so much compassion, especially for the Vietnam veterans, whom he saw as being rejected by their nation. He wanted to let them know that they had a home at Post 35 and wanted to help anyone who was having trouble acclimating back to society after having endured the atrocities of war. With the urging of Don Hinches, who was quartermaster, also money keeper, Phil served as junior vice commander as well as commander for many terms. He was also an officer on the Veterans Council for many years. Phil never met a stranger. He had an uncanny ability to listen to people and help talk through problems. He also loved children, which was a Kalaf family trait. He was the best uncle. He became an honorable uncle to many children of the Modern Business employees as well as VFW members. Then he had children of his own. He was even more dedicated to our three precious children, Sarah, Melissa, and Daniel. It was not unusual for him to take our three, along with any other available nieces and nephews, to Central Dairy and later Yo-Yums for ice cream. Other children knew that he always carried a bag of Bit-A-Honeys in his jacket pocket. He continued with the Bit-A-Honeys until he couldn't tolerate food anymore. His love for family, children, and all people just amazed me and made me love him all the more. As a nurse, I needed a partner who could be equal in the care of the family. He fit the bill. There were times he would come to visit the unit where I was working. He always came with treats, cookies, or his infamous popcorn. My coworkers wanted to see him more often than me. Phil had the ability to listen and talk to people. When he saw a problem, he wanted to fix it. If he saw a need, he wanted to fulfill it. He wanted the children of this area to understand the sacrifice that soldiers make in war. Working hard as part of the Veterans Council, he helped to facilitate bringing in the moving wall, both in 2005 and 2015. The moving wall is a half-size replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Don told me a story of a young 20-ish-year-old woman standing at the wall alone one evening. He went to talk to her to see if he could help her find a name on the wall. She told him that she wasn't looking for a name, but was in awe of the number of names on the wall. She asked if those were the names of all the soldiers who fought in the war. He replied, "No, ma'am. Those were the soldiers that didn't make it home." She was devastated and broke into tears. The young people need to understand the price of their freedom. Bill was so proud of these labor-intensive projects, as well as in addition to the 2015 Moving Wall exhibition, the Veterans Council held a Welcome Home to the Vietnam Veterans celebration, which was held on Capitol Avenue. Also in 2015, during the Moving Wall exhibition, the Navy Sea Cadets represented the youth in reading the names of the Mid-Missouri veterans that had died in the war. One of those cadets was our oldest grandson, Austin. He went on to enlist in the Navy as I don't know if this is right, but submariner. He's on a submarine in 2018. He's been deployed many times and is currently deployed. He watched his grandfather very closely and took his loyalty to country very seriously. I also wanted to mention that the picture that you see on the stone and also on the, whatever you call that thing over there, the sign, was Phil, was drawn by our grandson Draven. Can you stand, Draven? And that picture went to nationals. He won all the way up to nationals, which we love that picture, and it sits in our living room very proudly. Another problem Phil saw was the fact that two VFWs could not survive in Jefferson City. If they did not combine into one, they had the possibility of both going defunct. Phil, Don, and Tom Ward took that project on and worked tirelessly to combine the posts into the present Wyman Basinger Roy Sone VFW Post 1003. The last project I want to mention is the piece of land we are on today. Before this beautiful plaza was built, an old dilapidated storage building stood, blocking the view of the VFW. The land, which was owned by the Casey's Corporation, had been unusable related to contamination. Phil contacted the Casey's Corporation to ask about acquiring the land, which they were not open to at first, but also the Department of Natural Resources was monitoring the quality of the land and had declared it unusable and unsellable at the time. But you know, they didn't know Phil. It didn't stop him. So he continued to contact the Department of Natural Resources to find out the status of the land that they tested every 3 months. While that was going on, Phil continued to persuade the people at the Casey's headquarters that the VFW could put the land to good use. Once the Department of Natural Resources declared the land safe to use, Phil had negotiated with Casey's headquarters to donate the land to the VFW. He worked very hard at this project and was very glad he had succeeded in getting the eyesore building removed. Phil poured out his heart and soul to support all the activities put on by the VFW, but he did not do this alone. His brother by another mother, Don Hinches, was his main partner in making this post succeed in every way possible. But he worked with and was grateful for all of the members of this post. He was so glad to be able to use his cooking skills for the VFW activities. Dale Brandis tells me that told me a couple of weeks ago that the iced tea that will be served was Phil's recipe. That made me smile. Phil did give his heart and soul to this post until he just couldn't do it anymore. After Phil was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2018, he did well for a while. After all, Parkinson's was not a fatal disease, we were told. But then in February of 2020, he began having chest pains and breathing difficulties that could not be explained. He had low blood pressure, and he passed out daily, if not several times per day. I would take him to the emergency room, and they would say, all his numbers look good. And they couldn't give an explanation for his symptoms, but assumed it was not life-threatening. Even though we carried his CPAP in the car to help with his breathing, Phil wanted to visit the VFW one more time. He knew it was his last visit. He was welcomed so warmly by all the bingo players and veterans alike because we came on bingo day. It did his heart a lot of good to see the joy of the people he had served. Because we were under the impression that he just had Parkinson's, but was breathing so fast that he could not swallow fluids or foods or his medications, we chose to have a feeding tube inserted. That was on September 21st. The next day, he had a routine EEG and MRI of his brain. On Friday, September 23rd, we learned why he was having all of these unusual symptoms. His MRI showed that he had advanced ALS, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. The problem there was that Parkinson's and ALS do not usually present together. You usually have one or the other, but not both. This was his death sentence. His condition deteriorated quickly from that point. We ended up putting him on hospice care on September 30th. I needed to leave for an errand in the morning of October 7th, and Phil needed to have someone with him at all times, so he asked if Dawn could come and sit with him while I was gone. Our daughters were both taking time off work to help me with his physical care, and that day Melissa took off and was with Dawn. That night, Phil slipped into a coma. Our son Daniel had come in that evening from St. Louis to help with his care so that his sisters could have a little peace while they were at work. The next day, Phil did not awake, and the family was called. Don and Lillian came all day, and Don sat with the rest of the Kalaf family at Phil's bedside. Don left late Thursday night. Phil breathed his last at 8:15 Friday morning, October 9th, 2020. So, veterans, I am saying this for Phil. because he emphasized this so much during his last year of life. Scott England, Phil was so very proud of you and so grateful when you stepped up and became commander, when he no longer could give the VFW what a commander needed to give. He knew the post was in good, capable hands with you as commander. Don Hinches, where are you, Don? There you are. Don Hinches, Phil's brother from another mother. He truly loved and supported you as a brother, as he knew you loved and supported him. Whether he was pranking you by partially eating apples off your desk, or barbecuing for a VFW activity, or meeting here every Saturday for bingo, giving up his cooking skills, he knew you to be his brotherly rock of support. Veterans and auxiliary members of the Wyman Basinger Roy Sone VFW Post 1003, I want you to know how much Phil loved being here, working with each of you to help achieve your goals. I speak for our children, and please stand, guys. Sarah, Melissa, and Daniel, as well as their partners, Chris, Ron, and Ashley, our grandchildren, our Kalaf and Daimler sisters and brothers, our nieces and nephews, and all of the greats. We are grateful for the honor you are bestowing on your brother Phil. I love the most appropriate inscription on the Kalaf's corner stone. You guys can sit. Phil saw the best in people, with a heart to love the good, forgive the bad, and a soul that never lost faith in God or country. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so very much.
Just in closing, just a couple of thoughts that I have. I actually joined the post downtown at the Roy Sone Post 1003 when Tom Ward was the commander, and I was with them all along as we started meeting with this Don Hinches and Phil Kalaf, and encouraged the post to do so. And for the most part, there's a few members downtown that weren't happy with what we did, but it's been the best thing we've done, and we have a great working relationship because of that. And Don, Tom, Phil, you've been a great example for me to follow. Make it easy to be a commander. So when we're about ready to dismiss, take the time, and right over here is what the tiles are going to look like, the commemorative tiles. We have one there with Roy Sone and the Wyman Basinger's Phil's name on it, and you get an idea of what it's going to look like. Join us inside for hot dogs and hamburgers. We have veteran service officers in there. If you're a veteran, want to look into your benefits, we have the auxiliary in there ready to sign you up if you want to join. We have the post members in there ready to sign you up if you'd like to join. And then we also have the booth for our national home. And so thank you so much for coming out. Really appreciate it, and please join us.